Hello, in this video I will talk about neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers of the nervous system. They are relatively small molecules that carry the information across synapses from a nerve cell to its neighboring cells. And they are very important and they are the internal machinery that controls animal behavior. Generally speaking, the neurotransmitter is held in a membrane-bound vesicles near the synapse. The nerve cell with these vesicles is the presynaptic cell, and when it gets stimulated, the vesicles merge with the cell membrane of the presynaptic cell, and the neurotransmitter is released into the synapse. The neurotransmitter molecules which are present in the vesicles, they cross the synaptic space and match with the receptor molecules in the membrane of the postsynaptic cell. So that causes a depolarization in that membrane. Here in this figure you can clearly see the presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neuron. The space between the two neurons is synaptic cleft. So these vesicles, when they get stimulation, they are going to be bound with the membrane of the presynaptic membrane, and these neurotransmitter molecules are released into the synapse, and they are going to bind to the postsynaptic membrane through to their receptors. And these receptors are very important for each receptor, for each neurotransmitter. There is a specific receptor. So billions of neurotransmitter molecules constantly work to keep our brain functioning and managing everything, that is from breathing to heartbeat and to learning and to concentration levels, whatnot. Each and everything is carried out with the help of these neurotransmitters. They can also affect various psychological functions such as fear, mood, pleasure, joy, etc. And some common neurotransmitters in the brain and body include serotonin, dopamine, glutamate, epinephrine, norepinephrine, and endorphins. And if we see how do neurotransmitters work, so from the presynaptic neuron to postsynaptic neuron, the action potential travels and the neurotransmission occurs. So at the end of in our previous video we have seen what is action potential, how it is going to be generated, and what are the important roles of dendrites and cell body and axon in carrying out and also in generating action potential. So here at the end of each neuron, it is a tiny gap called synapse, and to communicate with the next cell, this is very essential. And this synaptic the gap, the synaptic cleft, so here the signal needs to be able to cross this small space, and it occurs through a process known as neurotransmission. In most cases, the neurotransmitter is released from the axon terminal after an action potential has reached the synapse, a place where the neurons can transmit signals to each other. When an electrical signal reaches the end of the neuron, it triggers the release of neurotransmitters, and then these neurotransmitters will bind and trigger changes in the postsynaptic cell. So after the release, the neurotransmitter crosses that synaptic gap and attaches to the specific receptors on the postsynaptic membrane. So it causes either excitation or inhibition of the neuron. So here if we see the receptors and neurotransmitters act like a lock and key system. Just as it takes the right key to open a specific lock, A neurotransmitter will also only bind to a specific receptor. If that neurotransmitter is able to work on the receptor site, it triggers the changes in the receiving. So, in that way, it is helpful, and the neurotransmitters work in neurotransmission. So, after that, or after its job is done, like what happens to a neurotransmitter after its job is complete. Once the neurotransmitter has had the desired effect, its activity can be stopped by three mechanisms. One is degradation, so it takes place with the help of certain enzymes. So these enzymes will change the structure of the neurotransmitters so that it can't be recognized further by the receptor. So in that way, the degradation of that particular neurotransmitter happens with the help of enzymes. And second one is diffusion. The neurotransmitter drifts away from the receptor, so that is through a process diffusion. And third one is reuptake. The whole neurotransmitter molecule is taken back up by the axon of the presynaptic neuron, that is which that neurotransmitter has been released from. So in that way, these are the three mechanisms which are helpful for the inactivation of the neurotransmitters. One is degradation, and another one is diffusion, and the third one is reuptake. So enzymes that are responsible for the inactivation of neurotransmitters, for example, acetylcholinesterase. So this breaks down acetylcholine into acetic acid and choline. Likewise, another type of enzymes like monoamine oxidases, they breaks down monoamines like norepinephrine, dopamine, then serotonin, and catechol O methyl transferase enzymes. So they breaks down catecholamines like dopamine and norepinephrine. So these are few examples. And then coming to the classification of neurotransmitters, as we have already seen, they play a very major role in everyday life and functioning. And we need to know there are number of exactly how many neurotransmitters exist that clearly not yet known, but more than 60 chemical messengers or neurotransmitters have been identified so far. And neurotransmitters can be classified by their function. One is excitatory neurotransmitters, and the other one is inhibitory neurotransmitters, and third one is modulatory neurotransmitters. Excitatory neurotransmitters are they have excitatory effects on the neuron, meaning they increase the likelihood that the neuron will fire an action potential. So some of the major excitatory neurotransmitters include glutamate, epinephrine, norepinephrine, etc. And inhibitory neurotransmitters, they decrease the likelihood that the neuron will fire an action potential. So they are going to decrease the action potential. They are going to inhibit the action potential. So some major inhibitory neurotransmitters are serotonin, gamma aminobutyric acid, or GABA. Modulatory neurotransmitters, they often refer to as neuromodulators or these type of neurotransmitters, and they are capable of affecting a large number of neurons at the same time. And these neurotransmitters also influence the effects of other chemical messengers, and where synaptic neurotransmitters are released by the axon terminals to have a fast acting impact on the receptor neurons, and they diffuse, these neuromodulators diffuse across a large area and are more slow acting. And the examples for neuromodulators are acetylcholine, dopamine, serotonin, histamines, and cannabinoids. So, three categories of neurotransmitters. Excitatory neurotransmitters, they stimulate brain activity, promote alertness and cognitive function. And inhibitory, it inhibits brain activity, reduce neuron firing, calming the brain and balancing mood. So, example for inhibitory neurotransmitter is GABA. Modulatory is modulate and regulate excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters, and they influence the mood and arousal and cognition. Serotonin and dopamine, which regulate mood, reward, and attention, are examples for modulatory neurotransmitters. So, what exactly excitatory and inhibitory neurotransmitters is? Neurotransmitters in excitatory, they can bind to the receptors and cause an electrical signal to be transmitted down the down the cell. That is excitatory. So here clearly you can see more sodium ions stimulate calcium to open the calcium gated channels, so that calcium influx will increase in that particular site or axon terminal of the presynaptic neuron, and here that stimulates the membrane fusion, then the release of the neurotransmitter into the synapse, and at the same time ion channels will open and sodium ions will enter along with the calcium ions, which causes the depolarization of the postsynaptic membrane, that is excitation. So that signal or nerve impulse is transmitted down the axon and reaches the postsynaptic cell. So, whereas in inhibitory neurotransmitter or inhibitory neurotransmitter means this can actually block the signal from continuing. So, that is, it prevents the message from being carried on. So, here you can say instead of sodium, so potassium influx will be seen, chloride ions also will enter the postsynaptic membrane. And coming to the types of neurotransmitters, there are a number of different ways to classify and categorize neurotransmitters, but they are simply divided into 6 types. Those are amino acids, peptides, monoamines, purines, gasotransmitters, and acetylcholine. So, in our next video, we will see the elaborate account of these 6 types of neurotransmitters. Thank you.